Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good evening. Hey, Amit, how are you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Sridhar?
All right, so let me just quickly recap what happened today, and then we'll get into some of the details behind the win today. So India has clinched their third Champions Trophy with I would call it a thrilling four-wicket victory over New Zealand in Dubai. They claimed, like I said, the third championship. It was amazing cricket, high-pressure cricket. India trying to chase down a target of 252 with 7 balls to spare. Uh, Rohit Sharma was the architect of the chase, but towards the end, it was Jadeja and Rahul who were able to uh, show some patience while a couple of wickets fell late in the inning before they won that. Um, so, just a quick thing, right? The final was between the two of the consistent teams in the ICC, with India entering unbeaten, and then New Zealand. Pretty much the only loss they had was to India. So, one interesting thing about this was the New Zealand had edged out India in the ICC matches before, so this is a good sweet revenge. And Rohit Sharma now has captured two back-to-back championships, one in the T20 and one is the ODI right now. So I'm going to pause right here and then give you like a little bit on what you thought about. Let's quickly go down to maybe we'll start with um, the chase and then we'll go back to the New Zealand innings. So let's quickly get to your thoughts on the India's chase of 251, and then we can go back to New Zealand's innings, and then we'll come back to the top players and things like that.
Sure. Well, I think my first thought actually is that um, recently India's gotten rewarded for all the hard work that they've put in. I really think, I know there's a very common notion people have that our cricketers are spoiled and, they take things for granted and all of that. And actually, if people like us from outside, when we go visit India or even the people living in India, right? These guys are in the ads and on TV all the time, and it's very easy to jump to that conclusion, right? And yes, they are cashing in on their success, but I've always believed like these are thorough professionals. They they work hard, they practice hard, they have a plan. They have analytics, they have a good strategy, and obviously they're very good players on the team. No wonder, right? I mean, we've had a good farming system for a while now through IPL and everything. So I think they've been doing the right things for a long time now. What was that? 76 out of 83 or some ridiculous stats, right? Like a very, very high win rate in recent ICC tournaments, right? Like some
And they
like the
won the
stat
last
was so ridiculous.
23 out
Mhm.
of 24 matches, I think.
No, but like even I read a stat somewhere over the last, I don't know where the cutoff was, but it's like India's win loss ratio in ICC matches, right? Both like kind of regular season matches as well as postseason or the knockout round, everything combined. I think the India's ratio is so high that the next win loss ratio is like almost half of India's or something like that. It's a very consistent performance, and you're right. India and New Zealand were not just considered only in this tournament. I think they have been most consistent. I think the ranking is India, Australia, and then New Zealand and South Africa are tied.
Hmm.
I don't know what the cutoff was, but India is way ahead of these other three teams. So they've been doing this for a while, and finally they got rewarded, just like they got rewarded in the T20 Cup. And so it was it was a nice feeling to see that because they've talent, dedication, all of that combined, and maybe they needed some luck to go their way, and that's what happened, right? So that's that. In terms of the chase, I think it was a very tense game. Um, you remember the last time we spoke, I was the one who mentioned that maybe Rohit doesn't need to compel to go for the shots in the
Hmm.
first 10 overs. He just needs to last, and because he can create magic later. In that, I had said that after the Australia game, because in that game, after Rohit got out with a rash shot, Kohli and others were able to keep this. Even during the middle overs, they were able to keep the scoreboard ticking at like 4 or 5 and over, which is what was
Right.
needed. I think in this game, that didn't really happen. I bet we had an abnormally high number of dot balls in these innings. I haven't seen any stats yet, but I'm sure there are stats out there.
Well, he was
So
76. Rohit was
no,
76.
not Rohit in general. I'm saying the Indian batting in general. There were
Oh, yeah.
many dot balls. Now, I didn't watch the New Zealand innings. Probably they had many dot balls too. But I'm just saying, kind of a lot of Indian scoring was like sixes, fours, and dots. Like yes, obviously they ran singles, but not as many as you usually see. And part of that is because guys like Kohli, they run the singles, right? Whereas here you had dot balls and then 4 or 6. So all I'm trying to say here is I was actually proven wrong. Like I think this was a game where India needed the start that they had, right? Going at 6 per over, 105 run opening partnership at 6 per over almost. That's exactly what they needed because we saw how the pitch behaved. We saw that the turn was much more, during the Indian batting. And this pitch, these surfaces have always been tough for a new batsman to come in and get set, right? And it was hard. And these spinners, I thought Bracewell bowled so well, even better than Santner. And Santner was amazing. I think Rachin bowled pretty well, given that he's a part timer. So if we didn't have that start, I don't know, man. I think New Zealand probably would have had an upper hand. So those are my thoughts on the chase. Very tense win, but we saw some consistent pattern, consistent batting from Iyer throughout the tournament. Rahul, whenever he's needed, he showed up. And the top three, maybe they all didn't click at the same time, but one of the top three is pretty much clicked in every match as well, right? Like in a big way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about it. We were talking about the law of averages, and we were saying that Kohli is due to have a bad game,
Mm-hmm.
and we did say that Rohit or Gill needs to shine, and it did prove that Rohit was the top scorer for um, India. And I have to go look it up. I think this is the highest chase in an ICC Champions Trophy, and
Yep.
I will have to look at that. I think I don't know if that's correct.
Highest successful chase, yes.
Highest successful chase. Rohit was phenomenal, 76 of 68. Shubman Gill, 31 of 42. As you
Actually, Rohit was
mentioned,
76 of 83. I think he slowed down a bit
83. Okay,
towards the
83.
end.
Yes, he did show
But
up. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that was
I
still
think
a
I had.
match-winning innings.
Yeah, and I do believe that their opening partnership of 105 runs was very critical, and obviously they did lose. And then the Gill's dismissal was what a catch by Glenn Phillips,
Yeah,
such
I
short
agree. I
cover.
mean, what can you do, right? I mean, you just sit back and
I think
admire that.
I do want to say something which I was talking to a friend of mine, and they said I think they have to stop crediting the bowler for those wickets. They have to give um, a special mention to the fielder for making those catches because those were catches which there is no way. Like Phillips has done some amazing catches throughout the
Yep.
tournament,
Yep.
and this was a beauty where he launched himself up. I mean, it almost looked like I was actually listening to the Tamil commentary, and they said, "Was he like a Spider-Man or a Superman?" You just call it. So
Yeah.
it was well
I mean, that
covered.
could have been if New Zealand won the game. That could have been the turning point of the game, literally, because
Absolutely.
that led to 2 more wickets and at least 3 down
And
and a lot of pressure. It's very hard, 2 maidens in a row, very hard to score runs. I mean, it was for a moment it was looking, and I mean, you could see like Rohit got out because he was shackled, right?
he
Like
was,
he
and
had to.
not only that. I mean, there was a point where New Zealand spinners had, I think, were 14 or 15 balls. They had no runs scored and a wicket, and
Yep.
that
Yep.
really puts a pressure on the batsman. And then with India 109 for two, I think you mentioned Iyer, um, Rahul steadied the ship. That was a very critical time because you had Satner bowling very tight. You had Bracewell coming in. It's a very good use of bowlers. You had Rachin Ravindra coming in. Bracewell comes in. So you definitely saw how this game could have gone either way because those critical overs were very important for India to navigate those troubled waters. And I would call it even Akshar had a very good inning as well. The game was in balance, and even at 201 for I think 5 and 39th
I
over.
would say even till the last maybe 5 overs.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
anytime you need like 6.5 and over, like basically if a wicket falls, there's a good chance you're going to get like 3 4 dot balls, and then suddenly the pressure climbs up, right? Like the pressure
yep,
can build. So
yeah. Especially at 201 for 5 because the rest you lose like 1 or 2 wickets. It's the tail enders there, and then the
yeah,
next thing you know, they get bundled out and the other team wins by like 20 runs or something like that.
I'll
But
say this. I know Phillips had his usual, great catches, great fielding, but New Zealand was sloppy in the field today, uncharacteristically.
I, yeah, I
They
would agree
dropped
with
two easy
that.
catches, relatively easy catches. One was a sitter, the one that Jameson, I think
Jameson
Jameson
one, the
dropped.
Jameson drop was
And
an
then Mitchell
absolute sitter.
dropped one earlier on, remember, of Gill, I think,
Yes.
at square leg, or like short mid wicket or whatever. Um, I think there was a run out that could have happened now. I think, what's their opener's name? Aksar. Aksar, I think. Now the Will Young, I think he kind of twisted his ankle. So it was luck for India that the guy, trying to throw, because if he had thrown the ball back, I think they would have had a run out. Like if he had thrown it like in time, but I think he fell, twisted his ankle, all that thing. The other, I think there were a few wides at the beginning, right? In a tight game, these things get magnified, right? So they're probably like 7, 8 extras that maybe they could have avoided. So who knows, man? I mean, I know Iyer got out fairly soon after he was dropped, so it's not like it was a very costly one. But these things, if you get the wickets a little bit earlier, that much more pressure builds, right? So I think some of it was that as well. And I think the biggest way India lucked out was Matt Henry in play.
Yeah, I was
I
that
think
that
that's
is
a big
a
storyline actually, right? Because his stats are amazing, both in the power play and in the death. I think it's in the death his average. I saw some graphic like it's 5.86 or something, and then all their other pacers were above 7. And you think that wouldn't have come in handy and useful for New Zealand today, right? When they ran out of their spinners and when they had to rely on their fast bowlers, and their fast bowlers gave them nothing, both of them. I actually don't even know why that Smith guy was in the side. They should have kept another batsman or maybe another spinner or something like that. I don't even know why they had 3 seamers on their side.
Yeah, I think so with Rourke, and I mean Rourke has some of those reverse swing, but I don't think it was effective. Jameson came in late. Um, he did get Hardik Pandya's wicket, but by the time
Right.
you knew that you had Rahul and Jadeja
Yeah,
came
by
in,
that time it was over. Yeah.
it was over and absolutely over. So let's quickly get to. I think you already called out Bracewell. He had a phenomenal bowling as well. Let's quickly dive into. And I know you did. You said that you did not watch the New Zealand innings, and I got to see it a little bit. But the way New Zealand started,
Mhm.
again, you have to mention this. I believe Rohit Sharma, I mean, and the Indian team, this is the 15 toss in a row to lose. I think you
Yeah.
can't even, um, I mean, you can even win the lottery, but to call 15 tosses losing in a row, it has to be uh, something out of the way. Anyway, New Zealand did up to bat after won the toss. They did bring very strongly with Will Young, and Rachin was phenomenal. And I think he was the player of the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. He started off very quick, 37. They did score about 57 in 9 overs, so they were accelerating very well. Then, um, you know, Rachin was very punishing on Shami, and that's something we'll get to talk about Shami in a bit. Um, and very aggressive, but what really changed for India was the introduction of spin. And Will Young was the first to go, LBW to Varun Chakravarti. And then very soon you had, I think it was the first ball in Kuldeep's over that Rachin Ravindra was bowled. I mean, it was a beauty from Kuldeep Yadav. You and I were talking about Kuldeep Yadav
Yeah. But he
about
redeemed. I mean, he was good, right? He got both.
exactly.
He got Williamson as well, right? Soon after that.
Yeah,
So
exactly. But the
I think
thing is
those are the
that
most important wickets in their side. 2 wickets. Yeah.
right, he did get Williamson too, which was a cotton ball. It was a beautiful ball, and then that put the pressure back on New Zealand. And when I looked at
Mhm.
it, they were, I think it was like 75 for three, and then just around the time I was able to like start watching the game. I think even a little earlier than that, and then late when Latham fell at 108 for four with LBW with Jadeja, it looked like New Zealand definitely had their backs to the wall.
Yeah.
But
They
then
did
you
well
had
after that. Yeah. I
yes,
agree.
you had Mitchell and Phillips. Again, the one of the things that you always mention it too. Like, you need to rotate the strike. Kohli is the master at it. He would always rotate the strike. When you looked at Mitchell's strike rate, he was 63 of 101. You think
Mm,
another 10 runs here and there, if he had
right,
accelerated a little bit. And of
right.
course, that's got to do much with the way the spinners were bowling.
Well,
Varun Chakravarti, Kuldeep Yadav, Akshar
yeah,
Patel, and
that's
Jadeja.
yes, that. But I think it had a lot to do with 75 for three and 108 for four, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure Mitchell felt like he couldn't afford to lose his wicket, and I think that was a big difference in the innings, right? India got away with 105 for three, right? I mean 105 for no loss versus New Zealand much earlier in the innings at 75 for three. I think their run rate started nosediving after that, understandably. So I think these are some of the wins that are so important. Even though others scored after and they put up a respectable total, I think you get their top three or two of their top three batsmen out with 75 runs on the board and 3 wickets total down. That's like almost like half the battle won there because they're on the back foot and it takes, even though they had a good recovery, imagine if they hadn't lost those early wickets, what would have happened, right? They could have easily scored another 20 runs then, easily.
Absolutely. And you
And
know
that could
what?
have
When
made a
I look,
difference.
right, the story for India, at least on the bowling department, because Shami and Hardik were not really successful. In the 38 overs, the spinners bowled, the
Mhm.
four of them, uh, Chakravarti, Yadav, Patel, and Jadeja. They only in 38 overs they gave up 144 runs. That pretty much puts the pressure on New Zealand, and when you looked at what Shami did, he was 9 overs for 74, and Pandya 3 overs for 30 runs. So the spinners pretty much won the game for India, even though Shami did get a good wicket after he came back. He did get one wicket with removing the dangerous Mitchell, and you could see that Mitchell was trying to, again, just like Rohit Sharma in the Indian inning, he was definitely trying to accelerate.
Right.
Could not really get hold of that ball, and it was a simple catch to Rohit Sharma. When you looked at it, I think the one other impressive performance on the New Zealand batting side was Bracewell. I'm very impressed with the way he's
Mhm.
only actually had 100, and I didn't know that he had 200s, and this is his
Yeah,
first 50.
yeah.
And three three fours and two sixers, and he really took it to the Indian seamers. And he was just going. I think he had like what 18 or 19 runs in one of Pandya's over.
Mm.
So, um, and I think the rest of the players, like you said, right? You just talked about Nathan Smith. He didn't bowl that great. He didn't
I mean, he did both
bat
much,
either. He
not
didn't
about
even
great.
bat. By the
Yeah,
time he came, it was like this one. Yeah. So he only bowled like 2 overs for 22 runs, and maybe it's a question that New Zealand must be asking themselves in terms of maybe they should have had like a spinner if they had.
that
Uh,
and they should have the field setting when Sharma and Gill were batting, right? Where a lot of the
mhm,
commentators were calling for like you need to have a slip there, just for that chance, right? And then there was a chance that went there. It went for a boundary actually. I don't know if it was
mhm.
Shreyas Iyer or Rohit Sharma. I don't know who it was batting at that point, but I think they did that a little bit too late, right? So maybe there's some things New Zealand could have done better from
Mhm.
captaincy or a fielding perspective or strategy perspective.
I think it's the fielding because if you take it, even though Shreyas Iyer really didn't, I think he only mustered like another 4 or 5 runs after that wicket. I think the bottom line is that they were a little sloppy on the field, like you said,
Yeah.
which is very unusual.
Yep.
You don't see that from this New Zealand side. They typically don't make mistakes. They try to stop 20, 20, 30 runs. And one thing Satner did say after that was he didn't talk about the fielding aspect of things. If he did, I didn't listen to it. But he did talk about the batting aspect of things, where he did say that would be, I think they were 20 to 30 runs short. And I think if they, the way they started, and even in the middle overs, when Phillips and Mitchell were going on, I really thought that they could turn that because they were batting slow, but those two players are capable of really launching an attack. And the Indian spinners, kudos to them. I actually thought that Rohit Sharma did not use his bowlers well, especially in the end when you had Aksar with 2 overs. But meanwhile, you had Pandya and Shami who actually gave up a lot more runs. So
Mm.
again, I really thought it was a chess game all around because Axar was what, 8 overs for 29 runs, and he was really taking it to the New Zealand batsmen. And when Shami was brought in and Pandya was brought in, you could definitely see that they did waste Axar's overs. So they could have easily gone all
Mhm.
four bowlers to
48.
10 overs each.
Yeah, yeah. One way to look at this is um, I do think India spinners are better than the New Zealand spinners, right? And then Indian batsmen better, maybe slightly better. Like I'm talking about like cumulative, right? Like slightly better maybe than New Zealand. So and New Zealand fielding definitely much better, right? Like where they're saving on an average, I think they have maybe their fielding gives them a 10, I don't know how many runs, 10, 15 run edge over their opposition on a routine basis, right? So I think in a close game, maybe the fielding difference was a little bit less today, right?
Mhm.
And maybe that made all the difference because anyone who thinks, oh, you know what, enough wickets in hand, 1 over to spare, that's an easy win now. You saw KL Rahul's commentary afterwards, right?
Mhm.
He used the S word, but he basically conveyed that it was tense, and he was tense, and I think just like in the Australia game, same thing here. Kudos to guys like even Hardik, even though his innings were short lived, or Rahul, or even Jadeja. Like they hit the shots at the right moment. Like there's so many times when the runs needed were like five, six more than the balls left, right? And then suddenly someone would hit a six or someone would hit a four, and then it'll come down to run a ball or less than that. So it was the same thing in the Australian innings where Hardik hit those sixes, Rahul hit a couple of sixes or at least a six, right? So it was just
Mhm.
timely shots, but if for whatever reason one of those would have been miscued and they would have gotten out instead and not gotten that four or six, it would have made a difference, I'm telling you, because it did come down almost to the last over.
Yeah. Okay. So let's quickly go down to some of the top performers for all the teams. I mean, obviously, uh, you know, um, Shreyas was, I think, in his 5 matches, he scored 243 runs.
Yeah.
That was a
I think that was
phenomenal.
second only to Rachin Ravindra. Of course, India and New Zealand played
Right.
more matches than anyone else. So some of it
Right.
is that, but still, that's that's sneaky good, right? No, I don't think I wouldn't have guessed that he would be the top Indian scorer. I should have added up the
Well,
number. I
Kohli
wouldn't have
had
guessed that.
Kohli did have, I think, 218. Iyer, I think prior to this match, Kohli was
Right,
highest,
but
but
I'm
I
saying
do
after
think that
this match. Yeah.
yes, after this match. And then from an Indian standpoint, even though Shami got 9 wickets, I don't think he was the most impressive bowler for India. I think it was Varun Chakravarti, followed by
Mm-hmm.
all the other spinners. But although they didn't were not in the top, but I do think that Kuldeep, Aksar,
I
and
think all four of
Jadeja.
them were great. I think Akshar has bowled tight
Yep.
throughout. I think Jadeja
Yep.
has been phenomenal. Didn't Jadeja get 5 wickets or something in one of the matches? Oh, maybe
No, not
that was
Jadeja
maybe
didn't get
against
it.
England. I don't remember now. Okay, but Jadeja was tight as always. Like
Yes,
in
he
recent
was.
times, especially in Test matches, I've seen kind of Jadeja not being that effective and not being that economical either.
Hmm.
But in in this white ball cricket, he was kind of his usual self, right? Like he's very hard to hit. I think all four of them did a good job.
Yeah, and I think from a bowling average standpoint, when you look at it, Varun was actually the tops in bowling average. I think he only gave up 15.11. If he was taking a wicket after giving up 15.11. That means that he's taking a wicket after every 15 runs given. Uh, that was good. Like I said, obviously Ravindra, the player of the tournament, he had 200s, no doubt. I mean, of course, Kohli had a wonderful series along with Shreyas Iyer. And if you ask it, I think Rahul was unbeaten in most of the innings, so no wonder his average is at
No, but he
140.
played
So
those innings that was needed, right? Like he was like,
yes,
without
he
those
he did
innings, you
play
wouldn't have won all those
very
matches.
critical
Yeah.
innings. Yes,
I felt
right.
that literally, like, this is the definition of a team win. Like, I mean, let's look at them individually, right? Like Rohit, yes, 80 was his today, 76 was his one big score, but he did have a couple of 40s, 30s, 20s, whatever, right? Like it wasn't like all bad. And he set the tempo. Gill kind of
Right.
tailed off towards the end, but he did have like a couple of really
Yeah.
strong innings in the beginning. Same thing
And
with
the way
Kohli.
Gill got out, you cannot
Yeah,
knock him
not
for that
today.
because
Yeah,
that,
he
yeah,
did
not
look
today,
out of
not today.
sorts today, but he did manage to get 30 runs or whatever, 31 runs, right? So
Hmm.
top three they played. Shreyas Iyer was probably the most consistent. So was Rahul. Hardik, he didn't get that much of a chance. I honestly think he did his part as well. I don't like his nonchalant style. I don't like how he doesn't sometimes try to look for a run, and that sense of urgency doesn't seem to be there in the body language and everything. And he's kind of fully reliant on those sixes and fours. But bottom line is he did deliver when it mattered, right? In both those games, he had some timely hits, and
Hmm.
that was so he kind of did his part. Bowling, I don't know how much we can expect from him. It's like, especially on these wickets. And then the rest of the bowlers did very well. Shami did get his five, 9 wickets. I think that does matter. Um, yeah, I mean, he's coming back. He's an older guy now. I mean, he's not Bumrah. I expect Bumrah when he reaches his age, Bumrah will still probably be good, but he's not Bumrah. But he was back. So yeah, I was a very overall team effort where different people showed up at different times.
Yeah.
And let's
Yeah.
not
So.
underestimate the fact. I mean, going undefeated again. So literally, there have been 3 tournaments now in the recent past where they've had just one loss, the final loss to Australia, and they've won all other games. And the I would say the Champions Trophy was probably the shortest one because we played what, 5 matches or something, right? Only.
Mhm.
But like they went through the gauntlet in the World Cup and even T20, right? I think in the World Cup you play like every other team. I think that was the format.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, right? I mean, the one thing you saw in this ODI Champions Trophy was you had two groups with just 8 teams. I'm not sure why they did not do a typical World Cup format
Because this is a
with
Champions
getting
Trophy, right? I think it's always a little bit. That's my impression.
different.
Don't hold me
Yes,
to it. I
right.
might be completely wrong on this, but I think it's a shorter. It's not like as long as a World Cup, or maybe it used to be, but now they have to fit into an IPL schedule. ODI is no longer that important, and maybe that's how it will be moving forward. But I'm actually curious to know what the duration of these and the formats of these Champions Trophies look. It's kind of a mini World Cup, right? The whole point of this
Hmm.
was you don't want like a 4-year gap between World Cups, so this is like a mini World Cup, right?
Right,
So I don't know if the previous ones were this short or not, but I think this is, at the end of the day, this is a mini World Cup, not like a World Cup.
right. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. But let's quickly go down to, I mean, I think we can look ahead. I mean, I think Rohit Sharma has not announced anything at this point, whether he's indeed going to retire. There was a lot of speculation on that. And the World Cup is only 2 years away, 2027. I definitely think Kohli will be playing. Um, and the core group of players who are playing right now, we don't know who's going to be in, who's going to be out. It's very interesting that you didn't even see Punt or Arshdeep, two players, not play a single match in this tournament, which was really shocking to me. But I do think that once they realized the pitches in Dubai was favoring the spinners, very unusual. This actually brought a lot of interesting things for one day, where we're so used to seeing 320 plus scores, especially in Pakistan on very dead pitches, and then you come and play in Dubai. I believe the way this tournament was done, I think this was the highest. I think the highest was India chasing Australia in the semifinal.
Right.
That was the highest in Dubai. So it brings back to good old memories about how in 50 overs.
Yeah, it used to be this way. And it's fun. I think it's more fun this way, right? There's a little bit more balance.
Right.
I mean, 250 is not like a very low score, 250 plus. But it's not like, every game, if it's like 350 plus, it's so one sided towards the bat. No, I like that. I like that a lot. My thoughts are that I don't even know how many. I mean, I wonder. I hope this doesn't happen, but I wonder if eventually ODI is going to just die. It's like how many games do you think the teams are going to play between now and the World Cup? What will likely happen is just like it happened before the previous World Cup. Is like maybe 5, 6 months before, not even five, maybe 3 months before the World
Hmm.
Cup, teams will start playing ODIs, right?
Yeah. The interest is there, right? I do think that when you just looked at all the matches, at least in Dubai, you did see there was a lot of crowd support. I don't know
It's, that's not the
where the
but
20
that's not the only factor, see, that I feel. I think it's, you look at the cricket schedule now, right? Because there's so many leagues now. There's IPL, but there's like every country has their own version.
Big Bash,
Big
yeah,
Bash, and no,
all
everyone has that, and the league and the junior league and this and that. So I think it becomes like a logistics thing. Like, how do you fit in? You need to keep this Test cricket alive. I think still T20 World Cup probably will be the most popular World Cup, right? Like more popular than the ODI World Cup. So that's not going away. So how do you fit it in? I hope they can figure out a way to fit it in.
Mhm.
So back to Rohit Sharma. I mean, in some ways, this question might be moot. I mean, even if, let's say, he sticks around till 2027, he's already out of the T20 side, right? I think his test spot is in jeopardy. I honestly think so. I don't think he's that good any longer in test. He actually never was that. So it's like, even if he hangs around, I mean, how much are we going to see from him, right? How much ODI is going to get played at all?
Well, I think today was, very interesting in the sense that, one of the things that even in this ICC tournament, yes, he had a couple of, bad innings, but there was a couple of times you saw some glimmer of that, glimpse of that, the hitman Rohit, right? And today it was not the hitman Rohit. I thought today was more calculated, aggression. Of course, he did lose patience in the end. Give him credit for the way he carried the innings today. Um, and I, for one, I'm not sure if I think he's going to retire. That's my prediction before the World Cup. But like you said, 2027 is a long time, and there's not going to be many one days being played. You have the IPL that's going to come up right now. Then the Test matches will come in. Then, as you mentioned, prior to the World Cup, they will stagger a few one-day internationals, and I don't know if Rohit will be able to sustain until then. Again, that's just me, but I definitely think
Yeah, I
Virat is going to
think
be
it might
there.
almost become like a logical conclusion for him to retire because, he's like, I'm already out of T20s. I think he'll play IPL, but his IPL form has been waning for a while now, right?
Hmm.
Um, so again, there's no guarantee how long he holds on to his spot and all those things. And then I'm sure his focus will be like, hey, I don't want to be out of the test side, but who knows? So it's like he's going to sort of fade away anyway. I agree with you. I think, we can't expect the hitman, 160 runs and all that. Maybe on more batting friendly pitches, it's still possible. I saw a couple of Kohli innings in this tournament, which are vintage Kohli, right? Like, so they still have it in them.
Hmm.
I think he's a good captain. Sharma is a pretty good captain, and he's got his team soundly behind him, and all those things. So I wish it continues, but I think he might look out and say, like, look, I mean, even if I hang around, I'm hardly going to be playing anything, and is it worth hanging around? Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. See, the other one I wanted to talk quickly was that, which no one talks about, right? Which is, um, I think Gautam Gambhir. I mean, I think I've been very critical of him, rightfully so. For what happened in the New Zealand test and then also in Australia. But despite a lot of the criticism he has faced in social media, I think it paid dividends. I think he's definitely one thing I didn't see him was like you didn't see much of him. He was always in the background. Even when the players were celebrating, you never saw him, at the forefront. So just like Dravid, I do want to give credit where it's due. Just like I know you said that you were wrong on a couple of things. I think so far Gambhir has done an excellent job, at least in this one day. And I mean, right now he has that to his thing. He won a World Cup as a player in 2011. Now as a coach, he wins a Champions Trophy. So I do think that I want to give credit where it's due. I think he's done a good job so far.
I mean, what I've always felt about this, Sridhar, is unlike the other sport that we love so well, right? Like football, where I think a coach has a huge impact, right? On strategy and this and that. I'm still not convinced. I think it's in cricket, it's to a much lesser extent, I believe.
Right, right, right.
Um, I think the on-field leadership is way more important than, and then they have all kinds of support staff and analytics, right? Which is again nothing to do with coaching per se. I mean, yes, the coach's job is to get all these right people in, but like then you and let them do the job. So I mean, I don't know if the previous T20 win and coming close in the previous World Cup was because of Dravid, and same thing. But how much of this is because of Gambhir? At least what we can say is he didn't let there's so much talent, and then obviously there must be egos on the side, and he didn't let that come in the way, or he didn't let his style come in the way. He's known to be a little bit of an abrasive guy, so I think we just don't know enough to judge one way or the other. Now, the one data point we do have, though, and I'm not putting it all on Gambhir, but like you remember the recent ICC, for the Indian cricket, they have all these new guidelines they have to follow about
Yes, I did
families
see
and
that.
all those things. So that tells me that things had gotten to a point where it was a bit ridiculous, right? Like where just kind of people could do whatever, right? And there were silos and this and that and all that. So that's on culture, and I would say that falls partly on the coach. So I think the jury's kind of out, but then again, I don't know. Maybe these problems have existed for some time. I would be surprised if suddenly these problems started popping up after Dravid left and Gambhir showed up. So we don't know that. I still think they have to work that out. Those were pretty damning reports, especially about people not celebrating together, right? Like that's just the test team composition, and which is a little bit different. Every team dynamic is different, right? So I think that's still troubling, and I think honestly, India has a lot of work to do on the test. I think they need a semi rebuild on the test side, with Kohli and Rohit um, not performing basically. So
Hmm.
yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yep. So I think that pretty much a wrap, and I think we get to the IPL, like you said. I'm not sure I can watch all the games, but I'll definitely be watching. And as long as there's any cricket on the TV, I think it's always good to see. You're going to see some new players, right? You want to see. I want to keep on lookout for who are going to be the breakout players from the Indian um,
I
area,
want to
right?
see
And
Mayank
Indian team.
Agarwal. Mayank, no, what's his name? That Lucknow fast bowler?
Yes,
Not
yeah.
Mayank
I think
Agarwal.
his name is like
Mayank,
Mayank Yadav.
Mayank Yadav. Yes, I want to see him,
Yes.
man. Like I think I'm assuming he's been injured and all that, and that's why he's not been considered for the Indian side or something like that. And injury should be expected, but like I mean, he's not just only pace; he's good with that pace, right? Remember
Yeah.
that
I mean,
guy from Kashmir that we had who was like pure pace,
yes.
and he was just getting hit
Malik
all over the place.
Umran.
Yeah, he
Yes. But
couldn't control it,
I
whereas this guy
exactly,
seems
and I
to.
think it's going to be interesting to see where each of these players are going to be. Again, I root for CSK, so I'm actually rooting for Rachin Ravindra to come in and Devin Conway too,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
yeah, you know what?
Everyone loves the
Very
Kiwis.
interesting. You did mention that was Conway hurt because he did play earlier in the
No, they
champion.
just can't fit him in, right? I think it's like then Will Young has to
Well, he
get
could have
out.
played for Nathan
I
Smith.
mean, whom do they take out?
Yeah,
And if
yeah,
they, yeah, I guess they had seven bowlers, right? You're right. They had seven bowlers. Well, I mean, if you count Glenn Phillips as a bowler, but like if they didn't have Smith and if they had Conway instead, yeah, I would have gone with that because they still have six bowlers, two pacers and four slower bowlers, right? Out of them, two are really good spinners and two are, both of them are decent part timers. That could have worked.
right.
I guess what
Yes.
that would have meant though is like 20 overs of pace.
Well, he was dropped because of poor performance. That's one of the reasons. But to your point about you brought Nathan Smith, you knew the Dubai pitch was favoring the spinners. You played there before. You definitely needed a good score. I mean, despite what all they're talking about, he did score 40 runs in two matches, but you know, every player goes through some tough patches, and I do think that New Zealand must be thinking in the background about why they didn't play Conway because that would have definitely added, even 20, 30 runs, better than Nathan Smith.
I mean,
That
that's
would have been a
hindsight
different
is
game.
2020, man. So yeah,
Hindsight is 2020,
yeah,
right? But
we
you know
don't know.
what? I do think that Will Young and Rachin were playing really well. So maybe that's where Conway couldn't find his place in the spot, place in the side.
You know what was
All
very
right.
different about this final? And it must
Yes.
be one of the very few finals in which both Williamson and Kohli failed,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Yeah, they both had some good
both are
runs.
good
Yeah.
chasers. I mean, obviously Kohli was in a chasing position in this game, and both are good in the big moments, like the really big moments in general. So rare failure in big moments for both of them.
Yeah, and two great players, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where he goes as well after this. Great victory for India. They get the trophy. It's good to celebrate India's. India winning two championships, won the T20, and then 18 months later, winning the Champions Trophy. As you said, they've been very consistent. And I think one stat I heard was they won the 23 out of 24. But I think I need to go look up the stat you were talking about. It is a very incredible stat in itself on their domination in the sport or in all formats, except for the Test cricket part. Obviously, they won't be playing the Test cricket final, but it's still an impressive win. Rohit Sharma now goes, for someone who has not won trophies after the World Cup in 2023, two wins like this really puts a feather in his cap, as I think he's only the third Indian captain to win multiple ICC trophies. And I think the other two could be, obviously, one is Dhoni. And I think the other thing could be, is it Ganguly? I don't know. I should look it up. Yeah. So that's where we are. So thanks, Amit. This was a fun recap. I think New Zealand definitely. I wanted to give kudos where it's due. Not only a classy side, but a side which fought tooth and nail until
New
the
Zealand,
end against.
Australia too. I would say Australia showed up, despite losing a boatload of bowlers or missing the main bowlers. I think they showed up as well in the semifinals and gave India a run for the money. So personally, I'll feel sad. I mean, I'm not as big an IPL fan as you are, and I love cricket between countries way more than like league plays. So I'm like, oh my god, when is India gonna play next, right? Like India versus someone else, and I think it might be us going to England in June or July, whatever that
Right.
is. I think it's like 3-4 months away, so that's gonna be a long time, man. So
Yeah, but there's IPL, so we'll enjoy
that's
that.
true.
All right. Thanks again, Amit.
Alrighty.
Have a good night. I know this is a long one, but it's a fun one to do. So give me a second to hit the stop button.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.